Episode 1: The Paparazzi and the Cage. The stars sparkled under the night sky, matching the flickering billboards below them. The streets shone in colors of red, blue, green, and yellow, illuminating those high buildings and crowded streets. Long Island, New York, a bustling western city known for its wealthy and sophisticated way of life. It was a city where anyone would love to blend in because of its splendor, glamour, and most importantly, its dazzling secrets. Evelyn Peddle was ready to unravel every single one of them. They see themselves as reporters, those who constantly provide the latest news and buzz about Long Island's celebrities. However, others referred to them as the paparazzi, a word used for a group everyone wanted nothing to do with. As she stood behind the tree under the night sky, Evelyn's phone rang several times. She gritted her teeth and answered the phone. "Hello, Evelyn," a voice echoed from the other end of the line. "Where are you off to now? Do you think the company pays you to be absent all the time?" Of course, it had to be him, of all people. Her skin had gone numb, and her voice lowered into a whisper. "Boss, you know that I've been doing this task for around 3 weeks now," she sighed. "I swear, I'm on the trail of something big. Trust me." "Something big, huh? Fine. I'll wait for this big news of yours. But if it doesn't show up, you're done for." Before she could reply, he had already hung up. Her forehead creased in frustration. No matter how fancy their lives appeared to be, it truly wasn't easy. Evelyn tapped her foot onto the pavement, waiting for him. Harvey Cage. He was her target. Well, he wasn't really her target only. This man is the most powerful man in Long Island. Being the CEO of Cage Group, he was also damn hot. These attributes were enough to make countless ladies crush over Long Island's Prince Charming. However, to a small reporter like her, the gossip was 1 in a million. Not only was he in the news, but also the woman he was having an affair with. The only reason Evelyn was stalking him was because of the latest scoop she just had. It seemed that the cold and belligerent damsel of the entertainment industry was having an affair with the CEO of Cage Group himself. If they were really together, then it meant that their entire relationship was like a bomb, ready to explode. It was the reason why she had followed them around, willing to sabotage her career. Otherwise, if her bosses were to know about this, they wouldn't have delegated the task to her. But she was determined to stand out. Competition, after all, was everywhere. Everyone wanted to report the next major headline. Everyone wanted to rise up the ranks. With all the limited scoops they had, she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip past her fingertips. "God, when is he coming out?" Evelyn murmured to herself. Although she was a rookie, Evelyn was also pretty smart, and she knows her capabilities. If the 5-star hotel were to discover her identity as one of the reporters, they wouldn't be letting her in. That's why she had the perfect disguise. She wore the hotel's uniform and even got her name tag on it. A Bugatti Veyron sports car parked right outside the entrance. Suddenly, a beautiful pair stepped right out of the back seat. All the staff marveled at their presence. There they are! Evelyn bowed her head and quickly followed them inside. Everything seemed to be going according to her plan. While she could have easily taken the pictures from far away, she wanted more solid evidence, not some silhouettes standing in the night. After all, if she wanted to be the best, then her photos must be undeniably true. Taking a deep breath, she followed them up to the presidential suite on the top floor. There, she leaned against one of the columns and took a deep breath. Her fingers trembled as she handled the camera in her hands. This was it. All she needed was to see them kiss and she'll get her shot. Having no clue of her presence, they naturally opened the door as if they were part of some dramatic television series. As soon as they saw they were alone, Isabella Fox wrapped her arms around Harvey's neck and pulled him into a deep, passionate kiss. Yes! Evelyn almost jumped out of her hiding place. It was really happening! As she was taking the picture, her lips spread into a wide smile. She even had to cover her mouth to stop herself from bursting into laughter. This time, she's positive that she'd get that promotion. All the marketing firms would surely guarantee her a spot in their company. She wouldn't even need to worry whether or not she'd get the seat in 3 months. Fuck, this really was it. She lowered her camera and averted her gaze. Now that she was done here, it was time to leave. It wouldn't be wise for her to linger around here, especially if she valued her life. However, before she could even step towards the elevator, a strong and powerful hand gripped her shoulder. Another hand suddenly covered her mouth, and she found herself being pulled back up against the wall. A strong fragrance fell on her like a landslide. Hey, what's happening? Evelyn struggled as she waved her feet up in the air, but it was to no avail. No matter the resistance she had, the grip around her wrists only tightened even more. Immediately after, the door creaked wide open, and she felt her back slamming against the floor. She exhaled in pain as her eyes squinted shut. The absence of light wasn't really helping her splitting headache either. What was happening? You're pretty bold, aren't you? A deep male voice echoed across the room, and her body immediately broke out in shivers. Who was that guy? Just then, the lights were turned on. The piercing stream of light blinded her, that she had to close her eyes from the suddenness of it all. Evelyn shook her head and rubbed her eyes, wanting to get a clear look of who had kidnapped her. However, when she saw who it was, her heart stopped. Oh, she's screwed. In front of her was the most beautiful couple in the world. Isabella Fox, one of the biggest stars of the entertainment industry, now stared at her with total disgust laced across her face. Standing beside her was none other than Harvey, the same man she had just filmed a few minutes ago. Even if they were dressed casually, they looked as if they were ready to storm the Paris fashion runway. She looked like a piece of crap compared to the both of them. Her nails dug into her palms, but now wasn't the time to feel ashamed. Instead, she tugged at her clothes and smiled awkwardly. It's not like she was dressed like an outsider. After all, she was wearing the uniform, so she might as well act the part. Sir, miss, she said formally, is there anything I can help you with? Isabella immediately saw through her act. She sneered. Really? You're still pretending? Miss, what are you talking about? Evelyn acted ignorantly as she furrowed her eyebrows. I don't understand. Well, if you two don't want anything, I'll just head out and take my dinner break, if you'll excuse me. Even in this dangerous situation, you still managed to lie. Harvey finally spoke. His eyes were narrowed. If you are planning to lie, then you should be smooth with it. For example, the numbers in your uniform are missing, and your work card, nowhere to be found. Her cheeks flushed bright red. How the hell was he this observant? Hell no, there was no way she was going to screw this up. Sir, you're quite an observant man, aren't you? I don't have any number because I'm still a temporary worker, a contracted one to this hotel. You're still going to lie? You good-for-nothing brat! Isabella swung her hand at Evelyn. Do you know this hotel's under Cage's group? He'll know whether or not they've hired a temporary worker. Now don't waste our time and hand the film over. Evelyn was shaking in her boots now. Oh, God, why are rich people so secretive anyway? Evelyn suppressed the urge to sigh in disbelief. How was she supposed to know this was one of his properties? It's like she's some mouse who had stupidly entered the lion's cage. Taking a deep breath, she took the camera out of her bag. Look, here's my camera. I'll even drop the news. Just let me go, she pleaded. You think I'm after that? Isabella didn't even bother taking the camera as she grabbed onto her small bag. Hey! She was just about to grab her when the man pulled her back. He was very strong, and Evelyn couldn't fight against him at all. She could helplessly watch as the movie star pulled the film from the corners of her bag. It seems you have plenty of tricks up your sleeve, she snarked. Without wasting a second, Isabella threw the film into the glass of wine. No! Her hard work, her tip, her promotion, they're all gone. Her heart trembled, but she kept herself together. That didn't matter anymore. The only thing she needed was to get the hell out of here. If she stayed any longer, there might even be more trouble at this point. Her lips thinned. You've already destroyed the film. Now let me go. Let her go? Isabella's gaze swept over her frail frame, and the corners of her lips twitched in disgust. After everything that had happened, the last thing she wanted was to let her go. In fact, she wanted to torture this bitch to the ground. However, this was the only night she could hook up with Harvey. After countless days of waiting, she wasn't gonna let anyone ruin her night. But still, Isabella pondered on how best to deal with Evelyn. Isabella gave a gentle smile and immediately leaned over towards Harvey. "Hey, Daddy Cage," she said comfortingly. "This picture has already been destroyed, so why don't we let her go? After all, we shouldn't let her spoil our mood. I'm sure she wouldn't say a damn thing." "You can go now," he said casually. "You heard him, right?" The movie star cocked up an eyebrow. "Harvey asked you to go. Now hurry your ass up and leave." Evelyn heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that she was safe, for now. While she didn't get the next big news, she was getting out of here alive. That was the only thing that mattered. "Thank you," she murmured, about to leave the room. However, just as she stepped towards the exit, she felt a large hand gripping her shoulders. What the heck? Her frown deepened as she glanced up at the man. Harvey wasn't looking at her anymore, but at Isabella. "You can go now," he repeated. Harvey, baby!" Isabella furrowed her eyebrows. "Are you not asking her to go?" "Go. Don't make me say it again." His voice had already lowered, and his eyes had turned freezing cold. Anyone who was caught under his stare would probably be running for the hills. Everyone fell silent, and the atmosphere had become awkward. Isabella felt her chest constricting. She wanted to say something, anything, but not a single word came out of her lips. Her coldness, after all, was just a disguise. In reality, she wanted to cling to him like a koala, but everyone knew that you shouldn't piss anyone off in this city. You can never tell whose nerves you are getting on. If she really wanted to not make him angry, then she must do as he had instructed. That meant she needed to leave. "All right, Harvey, I guess we'll see you some other time," she said, nodding obediently. However, before she could step out of the room, she made sure to give Evelyn a ruthless glare. The skanky bitch was the reason her night was ruined. If she hadn't been there in the first place, maybe she would have actually had him all to herself for the night. She's gonna pay for this. "I'll be going now," she called out one last time before leaving. As soon as the door closed behind her, the atmosphere lightened up almost entirely, but it still didn't make matters any better. Evelyn stiffened. Episode 2. The Punishment. Harvey was still holding her shoulders down. No matter how many times she tried to casually shrug his hand back, it seemed that only encouraged him to tighten his grip. Her heart raced in her chest. What was he trying to do? Not only did he chase away his one-night stand, but he also forced her to stay. Was he going to torture her here? Fuck no. She needed to find a way to escape as fast as possible. "Mr. Cage," she said slowly, plastering a smile on her face, "I really do apologize for forcing this on you. It's just, you know how it is working in this field. I offended you, I know, but just please let me go. I promise you won't be on the front page." "I've seen you before," Harvey simply said as he carried her over his shoulders and threw her onto the sofa. Without another word, he sat down on the other end, like a model ready for his first pictorial. As soon as her back hit the cushions, Evelyn clutched one of the pillows like a shield. She stuttered, "but we haven't seen each other before this. I think you must be mistaken. It wasn't like they met each other before anyway." "You've been following me for almost half a month." He cocked up an eyebrow. "Stalking me to the ends of the earth, and you're saying you haven't met me before?" "What?" Her heart skipped a beat. He knew? Actually, she didn't want to do any of this in the first place. She wanted to get stuck with some low-level action star or some sort. But if she needed this promotion, then Harvey was the only way she could get it. She bit her lower lip in embarrassment. "Look, to tell you the truth, I'm actually aiming for Isabella, not you," she defended herself. "Besides, once I take the pictures, I'll even blur your face out. No one would know." "Do you think I care about exposing myself?" He frowned. "Having an affair with another woman already sounds like a shady exposé." The words slipped past her lips before she could stop herself, and she immediately shut her mouth. Her cheeks flushed. "What I mean to say is, this is your private life. I just spoke too much." His eyes glinted. It was half a month ago when Harvey spotted her figure tailing around his shadow. After all, she wasn't really the best reporter he had ever met in the field. Even if it was raining, he'd still see her right at the back with her camera in her fingertips. A part of him wanted to see how far she was going to go, what exactly she'd get just by stalking him. Now it seemed that she just wanted to test his patience. She'd get a piece of him. For someone who can't stand watching me sleep with another woman, makes me wonder what you're going to do when you've experienced the very act. There was something about his voice that was so smooth and velvety, yet so sharp and icy at the same time. Evelyn froze, feeling her insides turning into stone. What the hell did he mean? She tensed. Look, I already handed the film back to you, right? She tried to convince him once more. I promise, really promise this time that you wouldn't see me ever again. Hell, I won't even write anything about you. Just please, let me go. She was just one of the reporters out there. He was a billionaire in his own right. Why would he go through all the hassle just to torture her, right? His dark gaze, however, said otherwise. Under the tense atmosphere, his lips parted. What he said was definitely something she didn't expect to hear. You seem to be missing the point, Ms. Petal. I'm not just some angel that could forgive whatever you've done, he said softly. If you have done something wrong, then it's only your right to pay the price. Look, my family isn't that rich. Just please think things through. Her heart was already jumping up and down from all the stress coursing through her veins. Her gaze fell on the door at the side. She had been part of the track and field team when she was in high school. If she ran fast enough, then he wouldn't be able to catch her, right? Moreover, he seems to be insanely drunk to chase her down. It was dangerous, but it was better than doing nothing. You got this, Evelyn. She cheered herself on as she jumped out of the couch and jolted towards the door. She was fast, but it seemed that it wasn't enough. As soon as her hands drifted across the handle, an arm circled around her waist and pulled her back. She looked up to see that it was none other than Harvey. Do you really think you can run away from me? He sneered. I don't have any money. Please, let me go. Her legs kicked up against the thin air as she struggled under his grip, but she still couldn't break free from his hold. Harvey was way taller than her. He was also quite huge, given his surprisingly strong grip. No matter how many times her fists slammed against his suit, he still wouldn't give in. Let me go! Let me go! He didn't say anything as he marched her into the presidential suite. A strong, fragrant smell drifted all around her. The lights were quite dim, revealing a large, smooth bed sitting in the corner of the room. There were rose petals scattered across the floor, giving off an ambiguous mood. Harvey threw her onto the bed. Evelyn immediately backed away as her back hit the wall. Why did you bring me here? She demanded, her voice trembling in fear. I'm warning you, I'm not someone you can mess with. This man had brought her into the bedroom. Does that mean he wanted to have sex with her? I know what you're thinking. Harvey stared at her for a long time as he calmly took off his suit jacket. The silky fabric fell onto the rug as he began to unbutton his collar, revealing his muscular chest. He tilted his head and narrowed his eyes at the young woman. And I suppose you're right. Your figure may not be the best I've seen, but I guess I shouldn't be that picky, should I? His lips twisted into a mocking smile. After all, I gotta change my taste from time to time. I guess that's what makes it exciting. Evelyn wasn't surprised. Her jaw clenched as a series of curses slipped out of her like a machine gun. You wretch! She yelled. Pervert! Rapist! She resisted him with all the strength she had. Guess I gotta teach you a lesson first. His eyes glinted with an emotion that couldn't be read as he grabbed a hold of her chin, forcing her into a kiss. Ugh! Before she knew what was happening, she already felt him on her, slipping his tongue into her mouth. There was something so intimate about his actions, something that she hadn't expected. Harvey tasted the sweetness of her lips, admiring the softness of her tender skin. There was no hint of softness in his actions. After all, he wasn't trying to be gentle tonight. As he kissed her deeper and passionately, her eyes suddenly widened at his actions. It was as if something in her mind had snapped, and her body immediately started shaking under his grip. However, there wasn't anything Evelyn could do. The more she struggled, the more Harvey got the chance to inch a bit closer and closer, till they were millimeters apart. A masculine scent wafted across her, and she suddenly found it difficult to breathe. What was happening? Evelyn wanted to use her tongue to pry the man's lips away, but it was only happily welcomed as he entangled his with hers like they were in some type of game. She shivered under his grip, her cheeks flushed. It was the first time she had ever experienced this feeling. After much struggle, she finally ended the kiss and tilted her head back, gasping for air. Her lips were swollen cherry red from the kiss, and her eyes were glazed over. Harvey took a step back to admire his actions. There was something about the way she panted that turned him on. The corners of his lips inched up into a smirk. Guess this is way more satisfying. He stared at her for a long time, as if she were a painting put up on display. There was no denying the fact that Harvey was extremely handsome. His angular face looked like it was carved by a god, revealing his high cheekbones and curved nose. Even the little details, like the curve of his lips and his slanted eyes, made him even more gorgeous. Any angle would do justice to this man's look. However, just because he's good-looking doesn't mean he could do anything he wanted. With all his gorgeousness, he should find someone who was actually interested in him. He didn't need to force someone who wasn't. Evelyn forced herself to take a deep breath, and she squeezed her eyes shut. It took her a few seconds to regain herself before she said, "Look, Mr. Cage, we both know that you aren't interested in me. In Long Island, you can have any woman you want, so there's no need to force me. You already said I wasn't pretty anyway. Why don't you just find other sexy models?" Harvey narrowed his eyes and he moved closer to her. "You're right," he said softly, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I can get any woman I want, but I want you tonight." Her heart skipped a beat. A wave of electric current immediately washed over her, and she could feel her entire body go numb with the suddenness of his words. There was just something about him and his drunk, husky voice that drew her in. No. Evelyn blinked and turned away, feeling her cheeks warm in an instant. What the hell was wrong with her? How could such an erotic thought run through her mind at this time? She wasn't some love-struck fool. No way. "Just let me go. I swear I wouldn't say anything about this," she stuttered. However, before she could say anything more, she felt a pair of hot hands running up and down her waist. The warmth spread all over her like a fire that couldn't stop, and she stared up at him, not really knowing what to say. What are you doing?" "I already said I want you tonight, so I will," he said arrogantly, instead of struggling. "You might as well enjoy your time with me." "Enjoy? Do you know what this is? Rape! If you don't stop, then I'm gonna call the cops." "Report it. But it takes a long time before a crime like this gets proven." As he was speaking, he pressed one of the buttons at the side of the bed. 2 ropes fell from the headboard, and he fastened them on her arms. Evelyn's expression changed. Her eyes became teary as her bottom lip trembled. It was really happening. "Harvey!" she yelled. "Let me go, you bastard! Will a celebrity like you rape a helpless girl? Don't you have any shame?" "You're making a hell of a noise," he frowned. She screamed and shouted at him, cursing his name out. But it was useless. Was there really nothing she could do? Just because he was rich, should everything really go by his rules? Evelyn initially considered herself as an outsider, that she didn't want to be a part of the luxury and lifestyle of this world. She had told herself that this was the only time she'd ever succumb to the big leads, but it seemed that it had only led to her punishment. Will the scar of this punishment ever heal, or is Evelyn destined to wear it as a mark of shame for the rest of her life? Will it break Evelyn into a million pieces and throw her into an abyss of gloom, or make her a strong person? Under the lustful gaze of Harvey, Evelyn shuddered while a million questions crowded her mind. Answers to none, she knew. Episode 3. A Few Tricks Up Her Sleeve. Harvey knew everything, yet he acted as if he knew nothing. Because of this, he had played her into his grasp. Harvey caressed her waist, and she trembled beneath him. She didn't know whether she was shaking because she was afraid or because she was excited. Even he didn't know. Evelyn struggled until her strength gradually faded away. Her arms were already strained, and her legs fell limp on the mattress. His fingers slid across her, playing her like a fiddle. But her mind had already gone blank from surprise, shock, and even pleasure. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she found it impossible to turn away.
"Don't cry,"
he murmured. However, she didn't bother listening to him. Her vision had become blurry, and all she could do was stare at the ceiling blankly. She had even forgotten to ask how this man knew her name. Evelyn didn't know how long she had been with him, but by the time he had finally stood up, she was really exhausted. He, however, looked completely fine. Placing his bathrobe over his shoulders, he leaned against the bedpost.
"Do you want to take a shower?"
he asked softly. He no longer appeared as the most intimidating man in the city. Instead, he sounded like her lover, as his whispers were filled with appreciation and life. Her lips thinned. This girl truly is stubborn. The corners of his lips quirked up.
"How about you get some rest?"
he suggested.
"I'm gonna have a bath first."
She didn't even bother saying anything when he went to the bathroom. Evelyn laid on the bed as she looked around the room in silence. It was as if the world she knew was already 1,000 miles away from her. Tonight, she had sex for the first time. It was everything Evelyn would have cherished so much. However, all she felt was a dry sense of indifference. Could it be because it wasn't with the right person? Evelyn remembered wanting to experience her first sex with someone she thought was special, but he never loved her back. His face was a blurry picture at the back of her mind. Her eyes squeezed shut. She had wanted to forget him, wanted to erase him from her existence, but it seemed that the mere thought of removing him was impossible. Evelyn had no other option but to resign herself to this bleak fate. Evelyn understood that love didn't last forever. Of course, this wasn't some off-the-hill fairy tale. A part of her knew that all of these were mere wishes, that she'd be able to move on and live with the life she already had. She didn't want to think of the man in her memories. After all, he was already someone else's husband, never hers to begin with. Her hands clenched. Perhaps it was because of her feelings for that man that she felt indifferent to what had happened to her now. Or maybe it was because Harvey's touch felt like 1,000 butterflies across her skin. It became obvious that humans weren't any different from passionate animals. Her mind had gone blank as her fingernails trailed across the satin sheets. He was a charming man, that was for sure, but it still didn't mean that he should get away with his actions. Evelyn lay in bed for a while before finally gathering the momentum to get up. The last thing she needed was to think of everything that had happened to her. All she wanted was some peace and quiet. When Harvey came out, he saw her sitting on the edge of the bed with a white blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The corners of his lips inched up into a smile as he brushed her hair.
"Are you okay?"
he asked.
"Do you want to take a bath?"
Her face still remained as cold as ever. "You know I recorded you, right? When you tied me to the bed and raped me. Do you really think I was not gonna expose the matter and have you removed from your position?" Although her voice was hoarse, there was a certain firmness tied to it.
"Of course not,"
he responded quickly, staring at her with narrowed eyes. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and took a sip.
"After all, I am known to hide it very well. Even if they were raped, they knew nothing could be done about it, so they took my money and let it go."
She stiffened. "So you're saying there are other victims?" Harvey stared at her for a long time before he took a step forward. Setting the glass down on the bedside table, he used his fingertips to grab both sides of her chin.
"You really are gullible, aren't you?"
he snorted, drawing away.
"With so many tricks up your sleeve, you're still naive."
Evelyn turned away. "I don't know what you're talking about."
"Do you really want to use the recording as evidence? Well, that's too bad."
Before she could figure out what was happening, he forcefully snatched her phone from his fingertips.
"Guess we're gonna have to destroy it."
"Give it back! Give it back!" However, despite her protests, he pulled the phone out of her reach and deleted all the recordings she had of him. He kept a straight face. While he looked fulfilled, she appeared the exact opposite. Devastated. Her face had morphed into a scowl, and her eyes watered.
"Do you really think I'll sit here and take that? I'll sue you. I'll fucking sue you. You're nothing but a reporter."
He snorted.
"Even if you claim to be raped, who's gonna believe you? You'll look like some clout-chasing girl wishing she was my woman."
"The only reason I even trailed you was to gather enough evidence. You think I'd want to be your girlfriend? Her chest heaved up and down, and her cheeks flushed in anger. Who the hell did this guy think he was?
Haven't you forgotten?
He raised an eyebrow as if bored by the chit-chat.
Whatever I say goes.
Her heart pounded in her chest. At this point in time, she didn't even know what to say. There was a reason why the wealthy ones were out of reach. They could do anything they wanted with just a wave of their bills, and no one had a choice but to play by their rules. Even 10 of her wouldn't be able to fight him off. What the hell was the use of justice when she couldn't even practice it? The world was as cruel as many had said. The only thing she could do now was to endure all of this and get out as soon as she could. As the thoughts streamed at the back of her mind, a piece of paper landed on her lap. Evelyn narrowed her eyes only to see that it was a check. Her eyes widened. $700,000. It was $700,000. But what do you mean by this? She finally raised her head. Her eyes, if possible, had become even darker. Are you trying to pay me off and cover the disgusting act you just pulled? Is that it? Was he trying to be generous?
I don't want to take advantage of you and leave you with nothing. That's $700,000.
He nodded at the check.
You don't have to do this kind of work anymore. You can go somewhere else. Start a new life.
Start a new life? Her fingernails dug into her palms. If she took the money now, then she'd be no different from a hoe. Did he really think that lowly of her? Without thinking further, she tore the check right in front of him. To hell with your money, she snapped. I may be poor, but I can't be bought. You got that? What do you think of me, some low-life scum?
No, I gave you the money because...
Because what? You think we can be bought easily? Evelyn sneered. She didn't even think twice as she grabbed a couple of bills from her bag and threw it at him. Then how about this? Here's the money for screwing me. Her heart was practically raging with anger. Harvey was a powerful man, and she couldn't fight him. She understood that. Not only was she raped, but he had also offended her in just one night. However, she certainly wasn't going to back down without a fight. This was just going to be another night, a night where she got unimaginatively drunk and lost her virginity. That was the only way she could move past this. While he was powerful, she was egoistic. Her gaze fell on the torn check at her feet. The amount would have given her a good life, but she believed in a life she'd actually feel proud of. Maybe she could have gotten a job she liked and lived in the house she wanted. Her struggles couldn't be understood by someone from a wealthy background. Why would they? If they had everything they could have ever wanted the minute they were born. However, she had her dignity to protect. Harvey stared at the $10 bills sprawled over the ground. They looked like scraps of paper, and he clenched his fists. Did this woman think she could buy him? Normally, this wouldn't have bothered him, but this was different. The only reason why he had given her that check tonight wasn't because he slept with her like other countless women. It was a feeling that he couldn't describe. He actually wanted her to live a better life, and now for her to tear it apart was totally insulting. The light in his eyes dimmed.
The money you're paying is way too little if your intentions are to buy me out,
he snarled. Evelyn froze. She simply lowered her head, not wanting to look him in the eye. You're the one who humiliated me first, she snapped. I only want you to feel what I felt. Not wanting to say anything more, she grabbed her shoes and hurriedly walked to the front door. A sore feeling emerged from her hips, but she really didn't give a damn at this point. All she wanted was to get the hell out of here.
Do you know that as long as you're in Long Island, you won't be able to escape me?
He tilted his head.
I still have 10 other million ways to torture you.
Hearing this, the first thought that came to Evelyn's mind was that of her brother, the only family she had. Was she putting her brother in danger because of her pride? To what extent could this man go to assert his will? To torture her? To punish her? Was this a threat or a warning? A chill ran down her spine as she stared at him in disgust.